Team USA's party in Miami post-gold celebration created an incredible recruiting opportunity for Matthew Tkachuk.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, February 24th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, Olympic hockey fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And we're going to continue the Olympic conversation from what has happened from the time that USA won gold to the time that they have traveled back to the States and now currently in Washington, D.C. We're going to discuss the recruiting opportunity that Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers have based on their trip back to the States. We're also going to discuss, will the Florida Panthers management do the same thing that one of their ex-roommates did as far as celebrating and honoring their first Olympic Golden Panther? And also, we are going to discuss how Matthew Tkachuk can become the first ever USA triple gold member and how the circumstances of this season for the Florida Panthers can at least accomplish that. But we are going to start today with the celebration and how this creates the great recruiting opportunity and how history is kind of repeating itself in a way, and it could. And we won't see this until maybe a few years from now when the cap rises. The Florida Panthers will be in a more comfortable place to at least acquire talent, and the fact that they've had the runway that they've had from 2021 till now, because again, although this season is unlikely going to result in the Florida Panthers making the postseason, with the President's Trophy, 3 straight Cup final appearances, two championships, and then celebrating an Olympic gold medal, the Florida Panthers and Matthew Tkachuk have been able to put South Florida not only on the map as far as hockey, but create new fans and also celebrate in a familiar place. But we have seen this before. If you rewind just 18 years ago, crazy to think that it's been that long, in the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, Dwayne Wade of the Miami Heat went over for Team USA. They won gold, which was a little bit of redemption after how they performed in the 2004 Olympics in Athens. And Chris Bosh, and LeBron James were able to get gold for the USA. And look what happens just 2 years later. Because Dwayne Wade has won a championship, and the other two guys in Wade and Bosh had not accomplished that yet. And all their contracts were set to expire in the same summer. And then the management of the Miami Heat at the time put themselves in a position to lure superstars and fit them under the cap, and also guys taking discounts. What if that happens the same way here in South Florida, which the Panthers have created their culture? They've made a commitment to excellence on and off the ice. Matthew Tkachuk has been the face of the NHL as far as personality and also accomplishing more than just on the club level, but the international level as well. And then because of snowstorms, which they were supposed to go to NYC to celebrate, they had to relocate their plane to Miami and celebrate there, which they arrived around 2 p.m. yesterday, had dinner at Cody in Wynwood. Andy Slater broke the news of yesterday afternoon that they were going to take the double-decker bus to tour around Miami as well, and then party at 11, the club in Miami, which they also, what happened at 11 as well was also the post-Cup celebration, where you guys saw that video of Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov with the Instagram model that he was looking at, that which he typed by accident because he was too intoxicated, or Brad Marchand walking back after they exited the club at 5 a.m. And then the Sam Bennett speech of, I'm not bleeping leaving. And then right back, just less than 8 months later, it's Team USA in Matthew Tkachuk's home, giving themselves an opportunity to show the other players what life is like in South Florida in February, that you don't have to be extremely bundled up, which, yeah, it was in the 50s, and it's going to be continuing in the 50s throughout this week in Florida, which we hope our neighbors north of Florida are staying warm, as this is another big snowstorm that is coming through the U.S. We've had quite a bit of those in the last few weeks, but the fact that you don't have to deal with that, with the extreme temperatures, and also the conversation that has been around the lack of state income taxes as well. This is an incredible opportunity. And I'm sure Tkachuk has found multiple ways, even in his intoxicated nature, saying, you see what we got here? This is South Florida, baby. That is that opportunity that I hope Matthew Tkachuk took advantage of. And this isn't, I mean, Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett, they were teammates at the Four Nations just last year for Team Canada. One, became friends, and look what happened just weeks later at the trade deadline. Brad Marchand wants to come to Florida because he sees that his play style fit with the Panthers, and it so did. It might not be immediate results for the Panthers in luring some guys, but they'll remember this. They certainly will. And that is what I'm very confident in when it comes to a team that still has their window open, despite this being a little bit of a down year. So there have been some names that I've just thought of based on situation, age, contract, and where and who the Panthers could possibly lure in the future. And I look at some of the guys on the U.S. Olympic team, and I think of, okay, some of these teams have their window, they're just opening their window, or they mean too much to the team that I doubt that we see a trade. Like, for example, the two guys from Minnesota, Brock Faber and Matt Boldy, I think that their window is just opening up. I think that guys like Connor Hellebuck and Kyle Connor, they take too much of the cap for Winnipeg, and I think that the Florida Panthers are going to try to solve their goaltending problems. Well, not problem. I wouldn't say it's a big problem, but at least life after Sergei Bobrovsky. What I think they're going to solve it sooner than later. At least they're going to attempt to. Jack Eichel and Noah Hannafin, those two, I think that Vegas is still very much in their cup window. So no to those guys more than likely. Jackson Lacombe, even though he didn't play a single game, Anaheim, I believe that their contention window is starting to open. Not cup window, contention window. Dylan Larkin, the Red Wings are about to make the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. So I think he wants a little bit of a taste of that, and he means so much to them there. I know Austin Matthews' contract expires in just a few years, the same year as McDavid, but I think he means so much to the Leafs there, and I think he's going to end up re-signing. Same thing with Charlie McAvoy. I think he's the future captain of the Bruins. But a few guys that I've thought about, I don't think any of the goaltenders. I think of four names here. I think of Brock Nelson, who not next year, but the year after, his no-move clause goes to a modified no-trade clause, and he'll be 35, 36. And with what the Panthers have coming up as far as contracts, not this year, but next, of guys who will expire in Eetu Luostarinen and Evan Rodriguez, with Brock Nelson's ability to win faceoffs and also defend, even though he'll be older, that might be a replacement opportunity if Eetu is going to get a little bit of a pay raise. I know the cap is going to go up, and that gives the Panthers that opportunity. But if you want something short term, for yourself, there is that for possibly Brock Nelson. Not immediate, but in a few years. Tage Thompson, this is completely situational for Buffalo because they're on an incredible run. I think that they are likely going to make the playoffs this year and break that 14-year drought. But what if it goes south immediately? I need to see more than 1 year of Buffalo making the playoffs consistently. And if Alex Tuch walks in free agency and they don't find a way to re-sign him, that might create a disgruntled Tage Thompson. Zach Werenski, yeah, there's a coaching change right now with Rick Bowness being back in the mix after firing Dean Evison. But also the fact that him and Matthew Tkachuk together, they were the ones to have that relation as far as being teammates with Johnny Gaudreau and bring his kids and all, as well as the jersey to the ice. What if things go more south? And also there's that familiarity with Bill Zito in the front office as well. And last but not least, and I've avoided this conversation for a long time based on this player, Brady Tkachuk. Because Ottawa's in a down year. They made the playoffs last year, almost took the Leafs to a 7th game, mind you. And if I know Brady has a no move clause as well in his contract, but what if things get more sour in Ottawa? Yeah, they're set to open a new arena in the next few years, but what if things don't get better? Then there could be he'd have to force a trade. I don't see based on the Panthers and their draft capital, I don't see it happening in the next 3 or 4 years, but somewhere in the next maybe 5 or 6 if things start to get worse. So those are a few players to keep in mind, in my opinion, who I think the Panthers could possibly lure based on post-Olympic gold celebration there. So that is my opinion on that, on who the Panthers could lure. Coming up in segment number 2, we're going to discuss how the Florida Panthers could do something very similarly to what their ex-roommates from the 90s did as far as celebrating gold medalists themselves. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And there's nothing like an NBA arena. The crowd, energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back to where it belongs, the fans. I pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming NBA game, and had tickets locked in within minutes. Love seeing the all-in prices up front, no surprise fees at checkout, and being able to see the view from the seat before buying made the decision easy. The zone deal stood out, chose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything felt quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And we have a special promotion for prior to the trade deadline for our Everydayer Club. Join it, and you get a ad-free audio and access to a group chat on Discord and more. Use Deadline ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free to join us. And you could also message me where we could message back and forth on everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. So join now or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. So continuing this discussion here on Team USA's post-Olympic celebration and how it's a great recruiting tool for Matthew Tkachuk. And we're going to do something a little bit different as well as far as discussing the victory for Tkachuk. And it's a victory for the Florida Panthers as well. And Matthew Tkachuk getting a gold medal, Bill Zito being part of the management group, and also Teddy Richards, the head equipment manager for them. So it's more than just Matthew Tkachuk. But yes, this is about the players. And one thing that the Florida Panthers' ex-roommates in the Miami Heat have done historically have been to put banners in their arenas for celebrating gold medalists. So we saw it with Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway in the Sydney Games in 2000, Dwayne Wade in 2008 in Beijing, LeBron James in 2012, and then Bam Adebayo twice in Tokyo, and most recently in Paris. So those are, and it's also very common in the NBA to have banners for Olympic athletes. We've seen the Celtics and Lakers do it with some of the members of the Dream Team in 1992 in Spain. So, but in the NHL and North America, this is seen a little bit differently, which the Florida Panthers have done it before, using a temporary banner for Alexander Barkov and Tomas Kopecky. So we have seen it, but it hasn't been permanent. And yeah, it's a little bit of a recognition for those guys, but they didn't obtain gold. This is a little different for the Florida Panthers and Matthew Tkachuk as far as looking at another team just a little bit south of you that you used to room it with. And why not add another one for fans to go into the arena and see, wow, one of our guys achieved this accomplishment. And the fact that they broke a long drought, and the first time that US NHLers have won since they first went in 1998. And speaking of 1998, when NHLers first went, it's also not common in hockey, which only 6 times that the NHL has gone. They were supposed to go in 2022, but they backed out based on COVID, didn't go in 2018 in Pyeongchang. So only 6 times. So it's still relatively young as far as the opportunity for guys to go. And internationally, overseas on the Eastern Hemisphere, Olympic hockey is more celebrated than the league trophy that you win. So it's more common that, and Jeff Merrick on the sheet has spoken about, when you look at biggest accomplishments for your country, what is the big, or personally, what is the biggest one? Your league championship or an Olympic gold medal? Most of them overseas will say the Olympic gold medal. While here in North America, most of that conversation is based on what is the biggest accomplishment that you could achieve. And more often than not, it's the Stanley Cup. And it's not only because of the fact that you get more cracks at it, but the fact that the Stanley Cup here has more of that runway than the Olympic gold medal because of how long NHLers have been competing for it versus competing for an Olympic gold medal, which, again, 1998 is the first time that they went. The Stanley Cup has been fought for since the 1800s and officially in the NHL in the 1910s, which was first called the NHA. So that 100 plus year runway and the fact that Stanley Cups are more emphasized leads me to believe that maybe it's more unlikely that the Florida Panthers will post a banner at Amerant Bank Arena celebrating Matthew Tkachuk's gold medal. So a little bit of food for thought there as far as if we should expect it, but at the same time, create an argument on why they should do it to begin with. Because if you're trying to make more fans in your region, and it's not only club hockey that will promote the game, but seeing that one of your own wins on the international level as well, and the marketing that comes with that, that is your opportunity to put a banner up in your arena. Which it's also crazy because when you think of a team accomplishment in the Stanley Cup playoffs versus an Olympics, yeah, every player is named individually and having a medal placed around their neck. While for the Stanley Cup, everybody's called one by one. Not called one by the commissioner, but the players decide who gets to touch what next and who to hand it to who. And you're not lifting something at the end of an Olympic gold medal. You're just taking a picture with the medal and kissing it. That's a little bit of a different celebration for that, and it's seen differently. We can't ignore that. But I still think, based on that accomplishment, because it's a first, why not do it? Why not? But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where Matthew Tkachuk could become the first American to become part of the Triple Gold Club, and how he also has an advantage when the NHL resumes. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, and the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and think about which teams can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. I love futures this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your picks cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, February 24th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, Panthers are back in action on Thursday. A good amount of the NHL is going to be playing on Wednesday, which Matthew Tkachuk does have a little bit of an advantage because Team USA is in Washington, D.C. right now, and they're going to be attending the State of the Union at 9 p.m. tonight, which, just to address the elephant in the room from what happened in the locker room, I don't believe that anyone who is not on a player or management should be allowed in the locker room post-celebration. And I think that even if the United States men's hockey team did win silver, that if you win gold as an American, you should be invited because you want to invite them, not because you have to invite them. And I will leave it at that when it comes to it. So the Team USA did arrive earlier in Washington, D.C. as they will attend the State of the Union. But when the teams do go back to their clubs, there are more than a handful of players who will have their opportunities to play an NHL game again immediately. And some of them might be at a little bit of a disadvantage because of the lack of sleep, the travel, going from one place to the other. And for certain guys, they're in a lose-lose situation. And I'll tell you about that in a bit. But here are the guys on Team USA who are going to be playing on Wednesday night. So Jack Hughes of the New Jersey Devils, Tage Thompson, Austin Matthews, Jake Gensel, Clayton Keller, Jackson Lacombe, Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Noah Hannafin, and Brock Nelson. Those are the skaters whose teams are scheduled to play on Wednesday. I'm putting goalies in a different category here. And the two of them are Connor Hellebuyck and Jake Ottinger. So while Matthew Tkachuk, he doesn't have to worry. He has a whole day to travel back to South Florida after attending the State of the Union on Tuesday night. He can still be back, get a little bit of rest, and still be right back in action on Thursday night when the Florida Panthers take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. But here's the thing about certain players who it's going to look bad if they're not in the lineup on Wednesday, which Craig Berube did say that Austin Matthews will be back in the lineup as the Leafs will face the Tampa Bay Lightning on Wednesday. That would look really bad if Austin Matthews, who won gold for his national team in the USA, and then his Canadian club team, he's not in the lineup for his Canadian club team. Same thing with Brady Tkachuk, who the Senators play on Thursday, so he won't have to face that criticism if they were in action. But Washington is close by to Ottawa, so that's a short flight for Brady there. So don't have to worry about that. But the Winnipeg Jets are back in action on Wednesday in Vancouver. And with Connor Hellebuyck going the full distance and the fact that with goaltenders is a little bit different, you could start Eric Comrie in the first game. Connor Hellebuyck could start the very next game coming out of the Olympic break. I think he's in a win-win in that situation there. So Matthew Tkachuk and some of the guys who are not playing on Wednesday have a little bit of an advantage there, which we'll discuss maybe a little bit of a disadvantage as far as the rest of the team who didn't go to the Olympics, which we'll discuss on tomorrow's show. But Matthew Tkachuk also has a grand opportunity to become a triple gold member. But there are other players who have that opportunity to become triple gold members as well. So 3 players have the World Championship as their one championship away from joining the Triple Gold Club. These are the 3 names: Matthew Tkachuk, Jake Guentzel, and Jack Eichel. The players who need a Stanley Cup in order to get to the Triple Gold Club: Clayton Keller, Tage Thompson, Jackson Lacombe, Zach Werenski, and Jeremy Swayman. Those are the guys who have the Stanley Cup left. But here's the thing on why Matthew Tkachuk could be the first American to be part of the Triple Gold Club. It's because of, if you compare the other 2 in Jake Guentzel and Jack Eichel, they are likely going to be playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs for multiple rounds, going deep. With where the Florida Panthers are in their season, and the chances being very slim to making the playoffs, Matthew Tkachuk could take this opportunity to go to the World Championships. And because USA broke a 92-year drought in not winning the World Championship, this is some extra hockey for him. He's already missed half a season. Why not go and get some more games in you and also be part of an exclusive club, which Nico Mikkola and Eetu Luostarinen for the Panthers had that opportunity during the Olympics. Brad Marchand and Sam Reinhart also had that opportunity. They didn't achieve it with not winning the Olympic gold. So this is Matthew Tkachuk's opportunity, because the World Championships this year happen between May 15th to May 31st. It's going to be in Sweden this year, by the way, for those wondering. And the fact is, with looking at the rest who need a Stanley Cup, if they go the distance, it's going to be past the World Championships. So none of those guys who have the Stanley Cup left are going to accomplish it before the World Championship ends. So, and if you narrow it down by process of elimination, Matthew Tkachuk has that chance. Obviously, if USA doesn't win it this year and he's not, or he's not part of the team, then he misses out on that opportunity. It resets next year. So we've seen Florida Panthers history happen with Matthew Tkachuk due to the trade. And we could see it. We saw it once again with him becoming the first Golden Panther. And now we could see him for sure. And hopefully making that history with Team USA on the international stage. And Matthew Tkachuk has already stapled his Hall of Fame case based on all of his accomplishments. And just adding another one to his resume will put absolutely zero doubt. And I already think it's already there. And just add one more thing to put him in the first ballot category once he retires, and that 3 years go by between his last game and being eligible. So that is something to be very excited about, Panther fans, based on Matthew Tkachuk and his possible accomplishment and being the first. And the first person could be doing it in a Florida Panthers sweater as well. And that is situationally for Florida with the celebration, Matthew Tkachuk possibly off the ice this summer. Get excited, Panther fans, because that could be that this Florida Panthers team and this franchise could set more history. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. We are going to come back for tomorrow's edition of the show to discuss really what the Panthers have left, because there are 25 games left to play. So we are going to return the conversation to Florida Panthers hockey, as now it is no room for error for the Panthers, as they are going to attempt to try to make the postseason, but there are still games ahead of the trade deadline. Where do the Panthers have to be in order to really put themselves in a great position to possibly buy at the trade deadline? Or have they run out of time? We'll discuss that on the next episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe on the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.